Well, after a lackluster episode, Stranger Things returns in a huge way with one of its strongest episodes yet.
Don't change the channel, don't touch that dial. We got it all on UHF. Take off your sneakers.
Hey guys, it's over Stranger Things, Season 2, Episode 8, The Mind Flayer, and holy shit's one episode. I mean, look, I knew after the last episode that definitely things were going to be relatively intense, obviously because we thought we were going to get that in Episode 7, but no, that was the 11-centric episode, so I figured this episode would be, that payoff, and not only was this a payoff, but essentially this kind of felt like the first half of the finale. It honestly did. I don't know, this finale in general kind of feels like it's split into two parts, and this feels like it's part one. And not only that, but this was easily one of the most intense episodes yet. There were so many things that went down in this episode, some amazing scenes in this episode, and genuinely some really scary moments. Like this episode, similar to Chapter 6, was a horror movie, and I definitely did feel on edge a lot of time in this episode, but let's just get into this episode because I definitely do want to talk about it. So we start in the control room, we see Owens, and he's assuring Hopper that the glass is polycarbonate, therefore the Demodog is not going to be able to get through. So when it fails, other Demodogs climb up, and they all start pounding on the glass, and immediately we realize that again, Owens just doesn't realize what he's getting himself into. I've said it all season, he has been completely in over his head, not really understanding how grave a situation this is, but also not realizing how smart the Demogorgon really is. I mean, we've seen that throughout these two seasons. The Demogorgon is relatively very smart, and it's able to pretty much sense their every move. Like, it knew that they were going to try to spy on it, so it did what it could to stop that from happening, and instead took advantage of that situation. So he signals the alarm. Mike realizes they're too late. He tells Joyce and Hopper that they're under attack, and the control room technicians get out. The Demodogs break through the window. Owens then leads Hopper up the staircase while the techs take the elevator. The Demodogs advance on them. Mike says they have to sedate Will so the shadow monster creature can't tell what they're doing, and Will screams hysterically that Mike is lying, and that was just an amazing way to start things off. I love the opening. I thought it was just one of the most intense openings we've had, but it really does show you how, just really how vast of a situation this is. I mean, there's just so much going on, and I really did love seeing that here. It perfectly puts you into the intensity of this episode. So the MPs get to the elevator, they find the Demodogs eating the dead techs, and meanwhile, Joyce asks Will if he knows who she is, and after a moment he says that she's Mom, and Joyce then injects the sedative, realizing that Will is very much still in there. So Hopper and Owens arrive as the Demodogs start pounding through the door behind them. They grab Will and leave, but they're forced to duck into a room, and the Demodogs then close in, and on the monitors, the Demodogs roam through Hawkins' labs, and the power goes out in the complex. So again, I mean, it seems like no matter what they do, the Demodogs always seem to be one step ahead of them, or even, I'd say, maybe like 2 steps or 5 steps ahead of them. I mean, it's insane. So Neil and Susan Hargrove arrive home. Susan calls to Max. When she gets no daughter, she checks her daughter's room and discovers that she's gone. And then we get a scene that I've really been waiting for, because, like I said, Billy has been one of my biggest flaws with this entire season. This scene, though, might have made up for that. We see him, he's getting ready for a night out. Susan knocks on the door, and when he says that he's busy, Neil then yells at him to open the door. Billy does so, and Neil asks what's going on, and they say that Max is gone, her window's open, and Billy says that he doesn't know, and Neil then points out that Billy was supposed to watch them. Billy says that they were late, and he has a date, and suddenly, we see that there is someone who Billy is afraid of. I mean, Billy is someone who has seemed like he's afraid of nothing, and, he's just kind of this demented teen, but we do see here that, yeah, he is terrified of his father. And when he says that Max isn't his sister, Neil then slams him against the wall, reminds Billy that they talked about respect and responsibility. He tells Billy to apologize to Susan, and Billy does so. Neil tells her that Billy is going to make up for it by canceling his date and finding Max, and Billy finally says that he'll do to it. Neil makes him say it louder, and now we realize what's really going on with Billy. Billy clearly is not allowed to have much of a life. He has to constantly keep watch of his sister. That is why he's on her all the time. That is why he's constantly always getting up on her. That's why he doesn't want to hang out with Lucas, because his parents are constantly on top of him. And suddenly, we actually do sympathize with Billy. We actually can see where he's coming from, and I really did love this scene. Now, does this necessarily make up for the lack of development he's had all season? I don't know about that, but it definitely makes me care a greater deal about Billy's character than expected, and not only is it because of Dacre Montgomery's really great performance here, but also because they're finally getting us more into a situation. We're finally seeing what Billy really has to go through on a day-to-day basis, and I thought it really gave a lot more context to some of the more sort of rebellious and very just, very nefarious activity that he's been involved in all season. So Lucas, Dustin, Max, and Steve, they walk back to town, and Dustin insists that Dart was actually one of the Demodogs, and he figures that once Dart molts again, he'll be full-sized, and then things are going to get even worse, because they now know that Dart is definitely not at all to be trusted. Dustin blurts out that Dart ate Musi, and Lucas tells him that he broke the rules. His friend says that he broke the rules by telling Max, while Steve sees something and heads south, and I like that Dustin is mad at Lucas for this. He didn't want Max to be in the know, and Steve sees something, he heads south. Lucas and Dustin go after him, and after a moment, Max follows them. They spot the lab with the power out, and we see Owens is working the nearest exit on the floor plans, but he warns that the locks won't work. When the power goes out, someone has to reset the breakers to turn the power back on. The breakers are 3 floors down, and Bob tells him that he does know how to operate the computer and says that he's got it. So Joyce tells him not to go, but Bob says that it will be okay, and this is definitely an event I think Joyce is going to be playing in her head for a while. We'll get into that in a little bit, but Jim and Bob then grab a walkie-talkie from a dead MP. Hop shows him how to fire the MP's gun. Bob tells Hopper to get himself and the others out as soon as the door opens. So Jonathan and Nancy drive up to the gate. They realize the facility is shut down. She spots Steve and the others. They hear the Demodogs roaring inside the building, and Bob gets to the breaker room, and we get probably one of the most terrifying scenes we have seen in the show, where he finds 2 dead techs. He's stepping over their bodies. He's throwing the switches, turning on the main power, and the group outside sees the power, but the gate for some reason isn't opening. Just for whatever reason, it won't open. So Owens is calling Bob, who used the computer to unlock the doors. The outdoors gate opens, and as Bob heads for the stairwell, Owens sees a demo dog on the monitors. Bob then turns on the sprinkler system. He's driving the demo back. He then heads back to the others, forgetting his gun. So you're like, oh shit, I mean, that gun was the only thing that could have protected him. That was the only way he could get out of the situation. So you know something is going to happen here. So as Hop leaves to prepares to leave with the unconscious Will, Owens gives him a walkie-talkie, tells him that he'll warn him of any surprise. So Mike, Joyce, and Hop get to the door. Joyce waits for Bob. Meanwhile, Owens guides Bob through the hallways but tells him to stop when he sees a Demodog around the corner. He directs Bob into a nearby closet. Bob gets in. The Demodog moves on after a minute. Owens tells Bob he has a clear shot to the front door. He braces himself, goes out into the hallway but knocks over a broom. The Demodog hears the noise and comes back. Owens yells at Bob to run. He runs to the front door, gets to the lobby, slamming the door shut as the Demodog slams into them. Joyce then calls him. The Demodog then breaks through, leaps on Bob, and guts him, just starts eating Bob alive, and Hopper then runs back, opens fire on it. More demo dogs arrive. The first demo dog rips out Bob's throat, and Bob is dead. Yeah, they actually killed Bob in this episode, which I was very surprised about. We see Hopper is grabbing Joyce, drags her outside. Jonathan and Nancy pull up, they yell at the group to get in, and once Hopper gets his truck, they drive the gate, pick up the others, and drive off, and the demo dog is quickly feeding on Bob's body. And this scene, yes, it is very surprising. I mean, I think most of us kind of speculated that Bob was going to be the villain of this season. Like, he was going to be the guy who seemed like he was perfect for Joyce, but he really wasn't. But it turned out that's exactly what he was. Not only that, but he really was a hero. He did what he could to protect them, even risking his life. He didn't care. He wanted to get them out of the situation. He wanted to make sure that they were safe, and that's essentially what happened, and it was very surprising to see that actually happen to him, but it really does provide fear in us that, holy shit, really no one is safe. If someone like Bob can die, who, sure, maybe isn't a huge character, but he still is a main character, and he still is a principal character for sure. If anyone like him can die, then maybe one of our other characters could die as well. And it really does, like I said, provoke that fear into us very well, and I thought they handled that extremely well within this scene. I definitely wasn't expecting it, but that is what made it all the more shocking, and I really love the direction they went here. So what I do love about this, though, is that it's not one of those things where, there isn't a second to breathe, because there is time to breathe in this episode. Similar to the finale, it very much reminded me of that, where, sure, there's a lot of action going on, but there is still time to talk, and I really did enjoy that. But there's not really much time for Joyce to grieve over Bob. There's more important things they need to deal with. So the group goes to the Byers' house. Jonathan apologized to the unconscious Will, that's saying that he should have been there. Meanwhile, Hopper calls the government, tries to get hold of someone who knows about Hawkins' labs, and once he hangs up, he tells the others that they wait there for help. He goes into Will's room where Joyce is sitting and sits on the floor as she cries, and Mike then looks at the phone, and then Bob's brain teaser games that he left off for Will earlier, and he tells the others, it turns out, that Bob was the original founder of AV and Clark, and Clark basically learned everything from him because of that. So yeah, Bob was very instrumental in that, and Mike says that he can't let Bob die for nothing, and figures that the Demodogs are the Shadow Monster's army, and if they stop it, then they can stop the Demodogs. So Mike figures that the entire thing is a hive mind, that the Shadow Monster is the brain, and Dustin realizes it's like a mind flayer in Dungeons and Dragons, and insists it's the best analogy they have, and he figures that the Shadow Monster wants to spread and conquer other dimensions, but Hopper thinks it's all nonsense. It doesn't really make any sense whatsoever. How could this possibly be from a game? I mean, it just sounds ridiculous. There's no way that's actually true, but they tell him the military won't be able to do anything, and eventually the tunnels will reach into Hawkins, and, it's just, again, it seems like it's an unwinnable situation. So Joyce comes out, says that they have to kill it. She wants to kill it, and I love her determination. You can just see Bob dying, that is the final straw. She's realizing, oh yeah, this thing needs to die. Like, we can't just send it back to the Upside Down. No, we need to kill it as soon as possible, and Mike figures that anyone can know the Mind Flayer's weakness. It's Will, because Will is, inside the Mind Flayer. So the Mind Flayer can't spy through him if Will doesn't know where he is. So maybe they can actually be a little bit more successful this time around. So the group takes Will out to a shed they've emptied out, and they covered the window, and as Nancy and Steve work, Nancy tells Steve that what he did to help the kids was cool, and as they go through the garbage, Dustin apologizes to Lucas, as he understands if Lucas wants his girlfriend Max to take his place, and Lucas insists that she's not his girlfriend yet, but Dustin says that he could feel the electricity and then walks off. And I love they took that, advice from Steve of the sexual electricity. I thought that was honestly a lot of fun, and we were thinking that Dustin was going to, confess his feelings to Max, and that maybe he was going to try things out with her, but he's seeing that Lucas and Max do have this chemistry, so he actually is stepping back, and it's this incredible development for Dustin. You would think that he'd do something immature, and he'd be like, oh no, you can't go after her, that's my girl, but he's actually not doing that. He's such a good friend to Lucas that he is willing to take a step back. He's willing to put aside his personal feelings for Max and move on, and I honestly really did love seeing that. It just goes to show how much they really did get into these two characters all season, even more so, I think, than season one, and that's something I really did love about the season overall. But so as Mike and Max get ammonia from under the sink, she says that she understands about 11, and Mike tells her that just because she knows the story doesn't mean that she's a party member. While Max says that 11 was awesome, Mike says that she was until the Mind Flayer took her, just like it took Bob. Remember, Mike is still, thinking that, 11 is dead, and that there is no getting her back. So, it's taken a while to kind of think that, but the fact that she hasn't returned yet, yeah, he's starting to think that she might be dead. We know obviously she's not, but Mike is definitely under the impression that, she's kind of gone forever. So as Joyce and Jonathan get drying lines, Joyce insists that Will is still inside and it'll work, and once the shed is ready, Jonathan puts Will inside, they tie him to a chair, Mike, Jonathan, and Joyce look on, Hopper used ammonia to wake Will up, and in the house the others wait. Max asks Lucas if the Mind Flayer will send the demo dogs after them if it finds out where they are, and Lucas insists that it won't, but admits that it will be Judgment Day regardless. So the Mind Flayer is unable to see anything with light lights in Will's face. He asks what's going on. Joyce tells him they're not going to hurt him, and Hopper then shows him the sketch of the Mind Flayer. Will angrily demands to know why they're tied up, and again, Noah Schnapp in this scene was incredible. Just him screaming, "Why am I tied up? Why am I tied up?" I mean, he was just incredible here. And the lights then flicker in the shed and in the house. He finally tires out. The lights steady. Joyce reminds him of his birthday. She describes his 8th birthday and how Will drew a rainbow ship, and Jonathan talks about the day that their father left and how they built Will's clubhouse. So they're slowly trying to bring his memories back, because as we know, the Mind Flayer is so powerful that it essentially is trying to take away his memories and replace them with false ones, or essentially new memories, and they're doing what they can to try to jog it back. So crying, Mike describes the first day that they met in kindergarten when they were both alone, and Will said that he'd be his friend. And again, it just shows us all the history these characters have together, and I really love seeing that. Joyce asks the real Will to talk to them. The Mind Flayer tells them to let Will go. Jim notices that Will's fingers are tapping and takes everyone outside. He works out that Will is using Morse code to talk to them without the Mind Flayer knowing, and Jonathan then goes back to the shed. He plays Will's music. He used a walkie-talkie to secretly send Will's tapping to the others. So Mike and Joyce then continue reminding Will of his life, while the others realize that Will is spelling out the message, "Close gate." So obviously there's an intruder in there. The phone then rings. Will hears it. Dustin hangs up. It rings again. Nancy rips the phone out of the wall, and the phone was obviously a huge sort of omnipresent figure last season, but it hasn't really played much of a role this season. But now we're seeing it is, and I like seeing, you know, sort of like the phone was the way to kind of end this. So meanwhile, Will closes his eyes and concentrates. Hopper realizes the Mind Flayer knows where it is. They knock Will out, but hear the Demodogs roaring in the distance and getting closer. They take Will inside. Hopper gives Nancy a shotgun. The group prepares to fight off the Demodogs. They hear the creature outside. A Demodog smashes in through the window, collapses to the floor. Hopper confirms it's dead. The lock on the front door opens. The bolt then slides free, and you can just see everyone is in total fear, not knowing what they're dealing with, not knowing what this creature is going to be. But the door opens, and hope finally arrives when it turns out to be 11. She walks in. She's wearing her clothes and makeup from Chicago. She sees Mike and smiles. He smiles back, and it looks like she might be the key to ending all of this. And that is the way this episode ends. So, holy shit, guys. I mean, like I said, a lot really did go down here. And also, like I said, this really does feel like the first act to the finale. I don't know if they intentionally did this, but of course, you know, they are following the binge model, and it very much does seem like these 2 episodes are really one big finale, and there's so much to get into here. First of all, I love that 11 is back. You knew she was eventually going to come back to things, but she's been so separate from everything that I didn't know when exactly we were going to see her interact with them, how that was all going to play out. We knew she was going to get back to them very soon because of episode 7. But honestly, this episode left us so hopeless that it was probably the perfect time to bring her in. I thought they handled that perfectly. I love the way it was done. It was epic. Just the music, the way that it was shot, just everything about it. I loved that ending. I thought it was probably the best way to end this episode. Let's talk about Bob's death, because I can understand if people are a little bit disappointed. It is Sean Astin. It is a pretty big actor. And if you were to tell me that Sean Astin would die the way he did, I would have thought, you know what, that was such a waste of a good actor. Why would they do that to someone like Sean Astin? Why couldn't they keep him around? But when you really think about it, this was a character that I think was there to, one, first provide sort of fear into us and get us, you know, to provide suspicion really and make us think, oh, we can't really trust this guy. Oh, he's not really on their side. And then secondly, I think he was also there just to show how unprecedented of a situation this is. I mean, sure, we had Barb die and things like that, and we did have Brenner die, but we didn't really have anyone that major die in the show. So by having Bob die, like I said, it really does show us that no one is truly safe and that really anything is possible. I would not be surprised if someone else does die in this finale. Do I think it's going to happen? No. I think Bob was the big death of the season, but I would not be surprised if the show does pull, a one. It does surprise me like it usually does, and I've said this so many times, I can't predict a single thing that's going to happen in the show, so I might be eating my words. If it does, I will, very much do so, but I do not think someone else is going to die. I think Bob really was the big death, and I think it makes the most sense to do that. Everything else going on here, I really did love. I love seeing more of Owens in this episode, how he really is working with them, but also how he didn't realize how dangerous of a situation this really is. I thought that was honestly really well done. The conversation between Dustin and Lucas, that could have, in a lesser show, it would have been these two competing between Max, and it would have been the two of them arguing, but this show made a very wise choice in showing that Dustin has matured so much that he doesn't really care about the girl. He cares more about his friend getting the girl and his friend's happiness than him actually winning and him actually getting the girl. And I really loved seeing that. I thought that was honestly really great stuff. And I do like that while Max and Mike, I don't think they're ever going to necessarily be friends, they do have a mutual understanding. Max understands how important 11 was to Mike, and Mike understands, why Max wants some sort of agency into the group. I think he very much does understand that, and you could see that he was at a point where he was ready to move on from Elle. I mean, I don't think he was interested in anyone else, but I do think he was at a point where he was kind of realizing that, yeah, maybe she's gone. Maybe I'm not going to get her back. Maybe I'm going to have to find a way to move on from that. And I think, bringing 11 back at that point was probably the best time to do it. You could just see the look on Mike's face. He hasn't really felt like he had much of a purpose, and now that 11's back, I think definitely it's going to be very interesting to see the way that does play out. Overall, guys, this was easily one of the strongest episodes of the entire show. It probably is the best episode of the season. I mean, there was just so much great stuff going on here. I really can't have much complaints. Even Billy, I mean, they really fleshed out Billy as a character in this episode. You see what he's going through. You see that basically he's been beaten down by his parents to the point where he's basically forced to watch Max with his every move. That's why he's so hard on her. It's not because of the fact that he is this, horrible person. Yes, he does do a lot of things that maybe do seem a bit unjust, but considering the environment he's in, you can't really blame him. I mean, he's always on edge, and you really do see that now, and I honestly really did love seeing that with his character. This was easily the best episode of the season, and I'm definitely going to give Stranger Things Season 2, Episode 8, The Mind Flayer, an A. So over, guys, doing this episode of Stranger Things. So let's guys saw this episode overall. Left your thoughts, Nick. Guys, finally, I have made to the finale. I will be reading the finale in the next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.